Everyone. We're now recording, so welcome to this School Education Gateways Teacher Academy webinar for beginning teachers and about beginning teachers and mentoring. Today we have speaking Rachel Lofthouse. I'm sure Rachel will also introduce herself when she starts her presentation. And so the webinar, this will last approximately 1 hour. We'll see with the timing, but we have reserved 1 hour for this webinar. And we are recording, so you will be able to watch this again later if you don't catch everything. And also we will be sharing all the slides with you afterwards. And this webinar is also in together with the MOOC that's ongoing on Teacher Academy. If you have not signed up or registered, please do so. Rachel has been also involved in that MOOC, so she knows the content of it as well. So without any further delay, I think we can start with the presentation. I will just mute myself. I'll be in the background. And if you have any questions to Rachel, please put them into the chat box. So we'll be able to take them after the presentation is over.
Okay. Well, that's better. Thank you very much for joining this session. This is actually only the second time that I've run a webinar. So if I look at all hesitant, it's because I'm remembering how to do things as I go along. So we're thinking today about the profession of teaching and how our early career teachers can be best supported when they're in their first posts, when they're working in schools. And I know from my research and from visiting other countries in my work that not everybody has the same frameworks, the same expectations, the same normal practices in relation to both teacher education, teacher induction, teacher employment, teacher mentoring. We are all working across a number of different systems. But one thing that I think is in common, and this is beyond Europe, across the world, is the need for our new mentors to be supported really well, our new teachers to be supported really well when they first enter the profession, because the challenges are very real, the demands on their time are very high, many of them are still very young, and actually we know that they can experience some real challenges, some real tensions in their work. We also know that as new professionals, they can offer so much to our schools, to our pupils, to our students, and actually offer a lot to us as colleagues. So mentoring has the benefit of helping them contribute as well as helping them to be supported. So we're thinking about mentoring as a foundation for the profession. This will be a relatively, I hope, a relatively informal session with an opportunity for you to reflect as well. So I'm going to move the slides on. Yes, so throughout our webinar, we're going to think about the extent to which mentoring is significant, why it matters to teachers at the beginning of their careers. We're also going to think about how we do the thing which makes a huge difference, which is to build trust. So young teachers are often quite vulnerable, they're often feeling quite stressed, sometimes they feel a bit lost, a bit at sea, and sometimes they are looking to find out who they can trust to help them. And mentors need to be able to offer that experience of trust. Another thing which we are aware of is that sometimes it's very easy to talk in theoretical terms, and even just talking about the idea of trust is theoretical. Trust is a concept. Trust is something that we all experience differently. Actually, in order to build trust in complicated workplaces, sometimes we have to start with action. So we're going to think a little bit about some practical approaches that are real, that schools and their mentors can use to build trust, to help our young teachers on that initial journey into their career. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on some case studies, and it's case studies written by mentors writing to their early career teachers. I'm going to invite you to reflect on those case studies, And I'm also going to draw on all of our experiences. So as you listen, as you participate, please feel free to jot down experiences. And we're going to think about what we might do as mentors or as people supporting mentors to really get the new career teachers off to a flying start. So the first kind of rhetorical question, don't need you to provide an answer at this stage, but it's an important question, I think, is a question of why. Why do we mentor early career teachers? And an easy answer for all of us, if we are currently teachers or if we have been teachers, is that we were all there once. It might just be 2 or 3 years ago, it might be 10 years ago, it might be 20 or 30 years ago. Once upon a time, we were all in their shoes. We were early career teachers. And this is a photograph of me amongst a group of early career teachers. I'm the one on the top left with the purple scarf, and this is my cohort of student teachers when I was a student teacher. We all became early career teachers at the same time. And that at the same time was 1990. So we entered a world which was familiar to us because we'd all been pupils and students in school, was familiar to us because we'd all trained to be teachers. This was us training to be teachers. And it was familiar to us because in that training we'd gone on school placements and we'd really learned some of the skills of teaching. But on day one, in the job, as a paid up member of staff, we were exposed to all of the complexities of a school environment. We've all been there once. And whether or not you were there at a time when in your country, in your system, there was an official mentoring practice, probably doesn't really matter in terms of our own direct experience. We will have relied on somebody. We needed somebody to give us guidance. We needed somebody to be on our side. So I think the sense, I'm going to try and plug my microphone in because I think some of you can't hear me very well. 1 second. Let's see. Okay. Can you hear me better if I speak like that? Okay. Okay, so with the headphones and the microphone, we are hearing better. That's fantastic, jolly good. They slip off my head. That's the only thing, they fall off. So we were all there once. That's the easy reason. That's why we need to be mentors, because we know how hard our job is. There are better answers to this, or there are other answers to this question about why we bother to mentor our early career teachers. And one of those answers is that although we've all been there, we've all been new teachers, they're not going to be us. Our future as teachers was shaped by our ambitions, our interest, our opportunities. Their career as teachers will be shaped by their interests, by their context, by their opportunities. What we cannot predict when they start is where they will go. We cannot predict their future. So we need to think about them as entering a profession which is very diverse, which has huge opportunities, but which they will only be able to succeed in if they are offered the right support, the right opportunities early on, because otherwise we lose people. We have a problem with retention in many countries, or we lose people's potential. They don't exceed their starting point. They don't get as far as they could in the profession. So I wanted just to share with you tiny little bits of information about these two teachers. So on their left is a teacher called Sabrina Hobbs. Now, Sabrina Hobbs has been teaching for about 17 or 18 years. She was once a student teacher of mine. She is now a head teacher, a principal of a very large special education school, allowing children with multiple special educational needs, multiple disabilities, for example, to engage in a very successful education. This is Sabrina. The photograph of Sabrina is her speaking in the House of Commons in the UK at the Department for Education Select Committee. She was invited there because she is an expert in special educational needs. When she started teaching, she was a geography teacher in a secondary school. We could not have predicted her future. But if we hadn't supported her at the start, if we hadn't given her opportunities at the start, if we hadn't kept her engaged, allowed her to be successful, allowed her to be motivated, she could not have become a highly successful principal or head teacher of a large specialist academy, and actually somebody who is sought after as an expert in her field. So that's Sabrina. On the right-hand side is another teacher, a teacher called Ryan Gill. Ryan started teaching at a very similar time to Sabrina, 17 or 18 years ago. He trained to be a geography teacher, the same as Sabrina, in the northeast of England. He worked in the northeast of England for a few years as a geography teacher, and then he emigrated to Australia. And in Australia, he has become a geography teacher, and then a director of teaching and learning, and a scholar within the Harvard Project Zero project, which is based in the States. He is an educational consultant whilst working full-time within a very successful school. Ryan had quite a difficult first couple of years as a teacher. There were probably days where he wasn't likely to carry on. But through his hard work and through the support and the capacity building that was offered through mentoring, he became a successful early career teacher and someone who could imagine his future as a global member of our profession. So one of the reasons why we mentor is not because we can imagine what these young teachers will become, not because we expect them to become the same teacher as we are, not because we expect them to stay in the same job or to even stay in the same school, in the same community, but because we are offering them a flying start, the best start possible for a professional career that can take them in all sorts of directions. And it's really exciting to imagine that as a mentor, you can be part of that journey. So we mentor not just because we've all been there, not because we know the challenge, although we do, but because we want our new professionals to have a fantastic future within the profession, often in roles that we cannot imagine. So I hope that sets our scene. We're not talking here simply about how do we mentor. We are thinking here about why we mentor as well. So certainly in England, and I know in a lot of other European countries, there is a huge focus on allowing student teachers or trainee teachers or students studying education at university to gain direct experience whilst they are studying of the school context, to go into school, to practice teaching, to learn how to plan lessons, to learn how to manage classes, to learn how to support progress. And that requires a mentor. So for pre-service teachers, when done well, a mentor becomes an essential component of their success. And these quotes here are the experiences of pre-service teachers talking about their mentors and identifying what works, what good mentoring looked like and felt like for them. And it's important, I think, when we consider our early career teachers to consider where they started. So what was their first experience of going into school? How did a mentor support them when they were in training, when they were on placements? And these sorts of quotes, and if you look, you can see words like, she was understanding, she was supportive when I was struggling. Other phrases like, she gave me reassurance, she helped as much as possible. They drew on their experience, shared good practice. They were kind, supportive emotionally, they offered advice. This is the sort of practice that you would expect and hope any new teacher, in fact, any teacher at any stage of their career, can experience. That opportunity to be welcomed, that opportunity to be cared for, that opportunity to be supported, the opportunity to learn from other people, the opportunity to be brought into a community, a school where other teachers are doing their jobs and can help you learn how to do yours. So we have here, hopefully, for most of our early career teachers, a strong starting point. It's not always the case, and it is true to say that some early career teachers don't experience good mentoring, but it is important to hear the voices of student teachers, pre-service teachers who do have good mentoring, because we can learn a huge amount from them. So we're going to move on, and I'm going to move on to a case study with a question. And on the left-hand side there, you can see a message written by Melissa. So Melissa has been a mentor for Ellie. Ellie was in her first year of teaching, and Melissa was designated as her mentor. And this is a postcard, if you like, a message written by Melissa to Ellie at the end of that year. And I will read it to you, and you can read it as well. And I want you to be thinking about this mentoring relationship. So Melissa is saying to Ellie, as your mentor, I also was feeling vulnerable, especially when you wobbled with some of your classes and seemed to rely on me to solve problems. So it's clear from this message that Ellie sometimes found teaching difficult. Some of her classes were challenging. That's no surprise, that's normal. And when she experienced those difficulties, she came to her mentor to ask for advice, to be given reassurance. And Melissa carries on. I realise now that mentoring is a delicate process which requires great care and comes with a lot of responsibility. And she says, it was a privilege to support you at the beginning of your career and help you to begin to feel more confident and to grow as a reflective, proud teacher. Remember that in teaching, we all wobble some days. So Melissa is giving Ellie some feedback about how she felt as her mentor and about how she might remember this experience going forward. So what I'd like you to do is to just take a few minutes. Think about Melissa, the mentor. Melissa was mentoring for the first time. Ellie was the first new teacher that she had supported formally. I'd like you to think for a minute or two about how you would understand the challenge that Melissa was understanding Ellie faced. Ellie seemed to depend on her mentor quite a lot. Why do you think Ellie was depending on her mentor? What are the challenges that Ellie might have been experiencing as a new teacher? So that's the first question. And I can see quite a lot of people are responding to that in the chat box. I think you may also be able to respond to it in the question box on the right-hand side. I'm just going to switch off my microphone for a few minutes to allow you to think about that question and to type some responses. Okay, so I can see quite a few of you are responding to that in the chat box. And it's really interesting that it hasn't taken you very long to identify what some of the challenges Ellie might have been experiencing would have been. She's a new teacher, she's qualified, she's trained, but she's suddenly in the real world. She's suddenly doing the job. And there's quite a lot here which actually makes me think that it's a very scary time for new teachers. So you're saying things like she may be feeling anxious, she may lack self-confidence, she may be worried or be experiencing behaviour problems from her students. She may be concerned about her knowledge, the knowledge that she needs to teach the curriculum. It may be her first opportunity to work in a professional setting. If she's been a student for a long time, this may be the first time that day after day after day, she has to go in and do a job to the very best of her abilities. She might be quite afraid of making mistakes, because one of the things about being a teacher is that you work in public. You've got students in front of you and pupils in your class nearly all of the time. And it can be very challenging to not be able to walk away and compose yourself and rethink what you're doing, because you have to do all of that in public. So there's a lot going on for Ellie, and a mentor will remember some of that and will observe some of that and may actually feel quite overwhelmed with the challenge of mentoring. And if you look at Melissa's message, Melissa is saying, as a mentor, she felt vulnerable. She wasn't always sure that she was doing the right thing. And it was actually only through the experience of mentoring that she realized quite what a delicate process it was. There's a comment there about meeting the mentor's expectation. So there's a whole series of things going on here about, is everybody expecting success all the time? Are you allowed to fail? Or is everybody understanding that Ellie is still a learner? She's a new teacher. She's absolutely still learning. And here we're complicated by the fact that Melissa is also learning how to mentor. So this is a very typical situation, perhaps one that you experienced yourself, perhaps one that you have some real empathy with. But it'd be interesting later on for you to have a look through some of the comments that you've provided in the chat box. So thank you very much for that. Let's move on a little bit. So if we think about schools, we think about Ellie going into a school, whether it's a primary school or a high school, a secondary school. These are workplaces. These are professional workplaces. You know that. You work in these schools. They are very busy workplaces. They are very complicated workplaces. And Ellie suddenly is a worker. She's not a pupil anymore. She's not a student. She's not a trainee. She's a worker. And she has to make sense of the work she has to do. But she's also only just beginning. So she's got to be learning. And the best place for her to be learning now is that workplace. So one of the things that I think about when I think about mentoring is the work of Stephen Billet. And Stephen Billet is an expert in workplace learning or practice-based learning. So understanding that when we get out there and we do a job in practice, in the real world, in real life, we need to still be learning and to be thinking about what those learning goals and processes are. So I'm looking now at this diagram and I'm thinking about Stephen Billet's identification of 3 goals of workplace learning. And he talks about 3 main things. And we turn this into teaching, learning to be a teacher in the workplace. And the first thing we can identify is that it's really important that even though Ellie or any other new teacher has got that first job, that they really do gain a sense that they want to teach, that they've chosen the right career. And not just that they've chosen the right career to start with, but gain a sense of what opportunities this career can offer them. Again, we all know in schools that not everybody does exactly the same job. So workplace learning is partly about recognizing the range of jobs that teachers might engage in early in their career or later in their career. And helping them to think that through is part of what a mentor might be doing. So the mentor might be doing that partly in order to help the new teacher think about their ambitions, to think about their goals, so that they can see the connection between what they're doing today as a brand new teacher, what they need to learn to do today as a brand new teacher, and how that will continue to help them as they move through the career. So that leads us on to the second goal, which is gaining enough capacity to do the job well enough. So Stephen Billet talks about gaining occupational capacities, learning the skills you need to do the job at the entry level, at the early career stage. If you don't gain those skills, you will fail as a teacher. You will feel unsuccessful as a teacher. You will struggle as a teacher. And as soon as you start to fail or struggle or feel unsuccessful, your goal to be a teacher will start to decline. And your ability to stay on top of the job, to form good relationships with your students and pupils, all of those things will start to decline. And that's a very, very hard place to be. So one of the things a mentor would do is to help the new teacher gain and secure the skills they need to do the job that they're doing right now. But of course, we also want our teachers to stay in the job and to move through their career successfully and to keep contributing in different ways. And one of the things we need to do as well is think about their future learning. How can we as mentors help our new teachers to develop the skills that they will continue to need for future learning? So I've always found that a really helpful way of understanding the work. This is also from Stephen Billet's work. And Stephen Billet talks about professional learning being made up of 3 main dimensions. And if we start at the top left of our circle, he says if you are engaging in professional learning, you need to know what it is you need to learn. There is a curriculum that is applicable to you as a new teacher. So learning enough about the courses you have to teach, learning enough about the special educational needs of some of your pupils, learning how to manage behaviour, learning how to prepare children for assessments and exams. All of these things need to be offered to you as a new teacher because you can't have learned them all before you've started the job. So one of the things a mentor can do is make sure that the learning curriculum for the new teacher gives them enough opportunities to learn the things they need to learn to do the job. And that will involve suggesting training, suggesting reading, suggesting observing colleagues, having conversations in depth about the complex things that make up a teacher's job. So there is a curriculum to early career learning that mentors mediate. There is also, of course, a pedagogy. So we think about pedagogy as our teaching and learning practices when we're working with our students and our pupils. But mentoring has a pedagogy. Mentoring is something based on conversation, based on target setting, based on providing feedback, based on support. And all of these pedagogies come together in an appropriate suite of techniques which will support the professional learning. And then finally, Stephen Billet talks about epistemologies. And he says that learning is a personal practice. It is about one person making sense of the challenge. It's about one person understanding their own ambition, understanding their own skills and weaknesses. It's about one person believing and developing values that are of relevance to the workplace. And when we mentor, we have to deal with the beliefs and values that our mentees, our new teachers, bring to their job. So they may believe that some pupils will always struggle to learn, no matter what they do. And for as long as they believe that as teachers, it is difficult for them to think positively about how to help all pupils, because they've already identified a belief about some of their pupils, which will be a barrier. But there are many, many other beliefs and values that our new teachers bring into the workplace, which might affect their learning. So as a mentor, it is worth reflecting on those aspects. And Melissa may not have put those things into words when she was mentoring Ellie, but all of those components will have come together to make a difference. So we have another case study here. So in this case, our mentor is called Carly, and she was mentoring Mark. And this is a sad story. So this is Carly thinking and writing to Mark. Mark joined the school as a new teacher. Carly was his mentor. So Carly is saying, when you joined our school, you were doing a great job as a new teacher, but you seemed to think you didn't need a mentor and you kept your distance. So in some ways, Carly feels a bit redundant. Halfway through the year, things seemed to unravel. It didn't go so well. And Mark seemed to blame the school and the kids, the children. So Carly noticed a change in Mark. He seemed to start off very confidently. He was doing a great job, she says, but halfway through the year, things seemed to go wrong. He made it through to the end of the year, and it was only at the end of the year that we, the colleagues in the school, including Carly, learned of the issues in Mark's personal life. And her belief is that it was issues in Mark's personal life that got in the way of him becoming a successful teacher. She now wishes that he had talked to her more openly, because she believes that she could have been someone he could have trusted. And Carly is reflecting on this and saying, I'm sad to hear that you've left teaching now. So Mark is one of those teachers that had a go for a year. Halfway through the year, things were going wrong and they didn't recover, and he's now left teaching. And the thing here is that Carly, the mentor, feels that she let Mark down. And I'm interested to know, if you were advising Carly, let's say you were Carly's line manager or the head teacher, what advice would you give Carly before she mentors another new teacher? Is there anything that you can suggest to Carly about mentoring that might help her feel that she's doing the job well and do the job well next time? So again, I'm going to give you a few minutes just to jot down some answers, or just to think if you don't want to jot any answers down. Give Carly some advice. Okay, these are some really interesting responses, and I have to say it's really impressive that as a group of professionals you've got this level of insight. So you're understanding some of the real complexities of mentoring. So you're going to learn a lot from each other, much more probably than you would learn from me, because you're the people doing these jobs. One of the things I would say to Carly is that sometimes things don't work, and that it isn't something to always take to heart. Now that might seem a bit flippant, but we do know that teaching is an extraordinarily challenging job, and that sometimes trying to balance that with complications or problems in a personal life is just not possible. And it may be that Mark could return to teaching at a time when his personal life is more stable, he's more emotionally ready, or he has more capacity. On the other hand, I think a lot of your advice is really important, and that is to do with being open, to offer a listening ear, to recognize perhaps a little quicker when things start to unravel, and become the person who Mark might be able to rely on. But it is easy to say these things. It is much harder sometimes to do this in practice. If I throw in another dimension, if I say that Mark started teaching when he was 42, that Mark had 3 teenagers living at home, that he became a teacher after he was made redundant from a job in industry, and that Carly had only been teaching for 3 or 4 years and was only 27 or 28, and that Mark perhaps found that Carly didn't have the same life experience as him, and he didn't want to burden her with some of his problems. So sometimes it is important to think very carefully about who the right person is to mentor, not just based on are they the right sort of teacher, but are they likely to be able to build a rapport when things get tough. So there's no reason at all why a young female teacher couldn't mentor a mature male entrant to the profession. But sometimes, especially if Mark had been a very successful member of the workforce in industry, he might have found it very difficult to admit how difficult he was finding the job when in the background other aspects of his personal life were also creating challenge. Sometimes perhaps what we need is more than one mentor. So some really interesting comments there. Let's move on again. This is what you've been saying. So you know that mentoring is a relationship. It's not just a process. It's not just a transaction. It's not about filling in bits of paper. It's not about holding people to account. It's a relationship. We know that mentoring is something which requires care. It is an emotional relationship, but we also, of course, know that there are some boundaries to that. Research would suggest that mentoring itself can actually become a toxic relationship. Not very often, and that's clearly the worst case scenario, but there are occasions where mentors add to the problems that an early career teacher is having. And that is something to watch out for. We know that mentoring cannot be a sticking plaster. In other words, if somebody is experiencing significant problems, there is a role for mentoring in helping them to overcome some of those, but it can't overcome all of them. Sometimes additional support, additional insight, additional help is needed. But we also know that mentoring can be a really powerful part of the learning culture, as in the professional learning culture, and that mentoring can have well-being at its heart. So it isn't just simply about learning to do a job and me helping you to learn to do a job. It is about me believing in you. It's about me wanting you to do the job well. And it's something which, as some of you have said very rightly, it's both heart and mind. Quite like teaching in that respect. So let's move on to our last case study. So here we have Craig. So Craig is the mentor. Gemma is the early career teacher. And Craig is writing to Gemma. In fact, Gemma is still teaching in his school. Gemma has been very successful. Craig is saying, I know I was your mentor, but actually I think you learned so much from so many colleagues and didn't need to rely on me. You took up my suggestions of members of staff who provided you with the help you needed. I know my own weaknesses and I recognize the strengths of those around me. In other words, what Craig is saying is, I couldn't have been able to offer you all the advice and support you needed. Other people could help to chip in. Craig finishes off by saying to Gemma, I watched you build up your networks and relationships, and your confidence grew. And he finishes by saying, sometimes it felt like I was learning vicariously through you rather than you from me. So I've actually got a typo on this slide. Craig, not Mark, Craig wonders if he did enough as Gemma's mentor. But Gemma had a very successful first year in teaching, and she's now thriving in her second year. Looking at the information from that slide, what do you think supported Gemma's success? So that's the last of these, I think it's the last of these questions. Yes. I'll let you type for a few minutes. Okay, so once again, there's some really interesting answers there. And what we're definitely seeing is a new teacher, Gemma, who has been lucky. She's been working in a school where lots of people were willing and able to support her, in a culture where that was appreciated and respected. She's also probably proactive. She hasn't hesitated from forming those relationships and from building on the strengths of other people. And Craig has not been too possessive about Gemma, hasn't wanted to be the single expert, to be the one who she depended upon. Craig has seen Gemma as a new professional in her own right and has watched her grow and is actually saying very clearly how much he learned from mentoring her. So this feels like a very positive story. And by the way, these 3 case studies are all real. We gathered these case studies from a group of mentors who we worked with here at Leeds Beckett University last year. So we haven't made them up. They're real, and you might very well recognize some of the situations. So let's start to draw things together. I hope one of the things that we've thought about here is that it is important to be ambitious for mentoring. Sometimes mentoring can be seen as a burden. Sometimes it can be seen as one more job in a very busy teacher's life. Sometimes there's a lot of paperwork, depending on the system. And sometimes, if you're not getting on very well with the person that you're mentoring, it can seem like a drag. But it's important, if we want to create the future opportunities for our new teachers, that we are as ambitious as we can be for ourselves as mentors and for the process of mentoring, believing that it can make a valuable difference. It is evident that we need to build trust, that being a new teacher can leave you feeling very vulnerable. Actually, being a new mentor can leave you feeling vulnerable. And one of the ways that we overcome vulnerability is by allowing ourselves to be vulnerable within a trusting community or a trusting relationship. We also need to think of mentors as people who absolutely recognize the professional learning journey and can do a lot to scaffold, to frame, and also to assess that learning, to keep giving feedback, to help set goals, to understand what opportunities might be best offered next. So mentors are acting as teacher educators for teachers at that beginning stage of their journey. They're not just the person they turn to solve today's problem. They are there for the learning journey. And if we think about the challenge of professional learning in schools, which are complicated, complex, and challenging places, then we need to think about the qualities of that learning and what a mentor can do to create the qualities of that learning. And one of the things they can do is really create opportunities for dialogue, rich dialogue. Hard to do when we're busy, hard to do when there's always another thing that's more important on the list. But it's important to create the dialogue, because through the dialogue, we allow people to think for themselves, to think differently, to solve problems, and not just follow a template put down in front of them, which will limit their ability to learn. Because what we're actually saying here, as a new teacher enters into the workplace of schools, is that they are crossing a boundary. And if you are interested in professional learning, then there is a whole literature on boundary crossing as a process of learning. And what we know about boundary crossing is that if we get it right, we create opportunities for transformation. So our student teacher becomes a successful early career teacher, and then they go on beyond. They don't just become a clone of us, they become the best possible professional they can be. So I'm going to skip through these two slides very quickly, but I just wanted to introduce them to you. If we think about what we're doing with our new teachers, we're trying to give them opportunities to be creative. We're also standing side by side with them. We're saying, I'm in solidarity with you. I understand your journey. I believe you can do the job well. But we're also throwing in the challenge that these workplaces the challenges they face are authentic. They're not theoretical. We are working in a very practical, very challenging landscape. So we know that if we can allow creativity, we can offer solidarity, and we do it in an authentic workplace, and we do the mentoring in that way, we are likely to offer good professional learning. What we also know is that what we're looking for our new teachers to be able to do is get better all the time, to expand their knowledge, expand their repertoire. And to do that in a way which is carefully tuned to the demands of the job. So one of the things that they need to learn to do is to be critiqued and to offer critique, but also to say things out loud, to share things, to show things, to demonstrate things. So the idea that we offer new teachers a chance to
Sorry to interrupt. I think we lost Rachel here for a moment. Rachel, can you still hear us? Just at the end. Hi, Rachel. Yeah, just a second. We'll try to get Rachel back with us. Just a moment. Apologies. Yes, Angela. Unfortunately, no image at the moment because we lost Rachel. I will just send her a quick message. realize that she has lost the connection. Yes, no image, no sound,
Oh,
unfortunately.
is
Let's. Hello.
that better?
Yes, that's
Your
better now.
voice
Yeah,
is
we lost you for we lost you for a
oh
moment.
yes, sorry.
Yes,
I don't know what happened, but never mind. We'll
it's
just
okay.
carry
Don't
on.
worry. Just carry
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Okay, very
Uh,
nearly finished. So I just want to finish off by offering you three practical things, and you can read up on these. I'm going to show you where you can read up on these. So one of the things that mentors often do is they have to observe their new teachers. And the new teachers, there will always be a protocol for observing new teachers and giving feedback. But we need to sometimes we need to think differently. So one of the things which I'll share with you is a resource around lesson observation, a different way that mentors can work with their student teachers around observing them, not their student teachers, their early career teachers, around lesson observation. And I'm not going to go into the detail because I can share with you the resource that this belongs to. But the key thing here is that by thinking differently about observing students, quite often we can change the opportunity for professional learning. So whatever opportunities you have for observing new teachers, sometimes ask yourself, is this the best opportunity for their professional learning? I'm also going to say to you that sometimes we need to think differently about mentoring as a role. And remember one of our case studies where the new teacher was learning from so many other people in the school community. And there is a phrase that we use where which is called Mosaic Mentoring. So I've got a photograph here of a pavement, somebody walking down a pavement perhaps, made up of mosaics. And each of the people within the school community who can offer insight, support, not for everything, but for the things that they have expertise in, can form part of this mosaic of mentoring. So again, I'm going to share with you or show you where you can read more about mosaic mentoring. It's not always possible, and sometimes it's not possible in the formality of mentoring, but it's usually at least possible in the reality of the workplace, as in we are one community, one group of teachers, and we have even informal opportunities to learn from each other. And then finally, this is a slightly strange one. Sometimes we have to take ourselves into a different environment. And here are two people walking down a pavement. These could be two teachers, one a mentor, one a new teacher. They may be leaving school together and having a conversation about the day. Mentoring is not something that only happens within a schedule. And sometimes just simply finding opportunities to have other conversations is really critical. Now, that seems like a terribly informal thing to suggest, but once again, there is research to help us understand the value even of walking and talking. It changes the dynamic. And I'll just say one thing about that. The experience of walking shoulder to shoulder with somebody is different to the experience of sitting at a desk looking at a pile of paperwork. It offers an opportunity for a different type of communication, and the pace of walking can also help to free up thinking. So again, seems like a weird thing to suggest, but sometimes we can really enhance our mentoring by doing it a little bit differently. And it may just be the walking from staff room to classroom, or the walking from one building in a school to another, or the walking together to a meeting at the end of the day. Even those provide opportunities for informal mentoring that can really start to change the dynamic. Now, I said I would tell you where you can find this information. So I have a research and practice centre here at Leeds Beckett University. And the research and practice centre is called Collective Ed. And we publish working papers. And the working papers are about coaching, mentoring, and professional learning. And in those working papers, which are now, there's more than 120, they come from many countries around the world. They have authors that include teachers, mentors, coaches, teacher educators. In the set of working papers, and you've got the link to it, there is a special issue on advanced mentoring, which we put together when we were doing some training for mentors. And actually also, if you look at issue 2, when you go to the web page, if you look at issue 2, you can see the papers about the observation practice that I shared with you, and also a paper about walking mentoring. So it might seem like a random idea, but there's something to go and read about if you wanted to. So I'm very happy for you to, if you're interested further, to go to the Collective Ed papers and find out more, and just even to have a dig around and read more widely. And actually, if anybody is wanting to contribute because you're interested in this area, then please do let me know. And I'm going to finish with this, because one of the things that we know is that teaching is really very difficult. And sometimes it feels like you just want to be told what to do and when to do it and how to do it, because you're a bit overwhelmed. And we also know that teaching is the sort of thing where sometimes it feels easier to be compliant. But one of the things about being a mentor is that you're trying to create a thinking professional, somebody who is bringing themselves into the role, who's not you, but is going to be the best possible teacher that they can be, with their future opportunities laying ahead of them. We need people in our job who think hard about the work, who don't just do the thing they're told to do next. We need people in our jobs who are able to be innovative and also able to bring themselves into the role. So don't be the mentor that says sit, stay, or heel, as if to a dog. Be the mentor who says think, innovate, be yourself, because we know that our best teachers are our thinking teachers. They are the teachers who are prepared to try things out for new, and they are the teachers that bring a lot of themselves to the job. That's an important part of being a mentor. And that was the last of my slides. And this one is from School Education Gateway.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Rachel.
Thank you, and
Thanks
so
so
sorry
much.
that we lost each other for a few minutes there.
No, don't worry, it happens. Don't worry about it. I just put here as a final slide. So first of all, thank you so much about the presentation and taking the time. It was wonderful. I see a lot of good comments in the chat. I think I want to export the chat so maybe we can have a better look later because there were so many good comments. And we also have been recording this session and we share the slides with you afterwards. So if you miss something, it's okay. You can go back and have a look. But before you leave, take a look at the feedback survey, click on the link. And for a certificate from this session, just click on the link so you can download it there. And it went really fast this this session, so I'm not sure if you have any time for any questions. Unless Rachel, did we lose you again? In any case, but I'm sure if you have any questions, we will try to follow up with this one, have some sort of forum or another place where we can still share the comments. I will just